We're streaming. We're recording. We are live with, well, not really, but we are live here in the studio with the Team Early as Fuck podcast. We've got Will Scholze in the studio. We've got Django. Hopefully he should be pretty chill.
Yeah.
Did a good run this morning. And he just ate like 3 cups of food, so he should be good to go.
Yeah.
Will, my man, good to meet you in person finally.
Yeah, good to meet you too, yeah.
I'm excited. Yeah. I'm excited to make beef great again.
Yeah.
And to talk about what you've got going on because unfortunately, and I need to get one thing for 2019 for myself is a greater awareness for community, and then also being much more clear with my words, because I'm definitely someone who has like a very small brain mouth filter, working on improving it. And I've got plenty of friends who are vegan, who are vegetarian, who are pescatarian, and especially the ones that do it for ethical reasons. Mm-hmm. That's a conversation for another day, and that's definitely a weighted topic, a deep topic. But in the world of health, fitness, wellness, there is this poorly researched idea that a vegetable-based diet, especially when we're talking not in season monocrops, is like healthier for everyone, including the environment, when research has shown time and time again, like they'll cite the China study, they'll cite the Lancet report, which have all been debunked by people who are like, no, you can't just cherry pick. And we'll touch on all this later, but you can't cherry pick, and these vegetables you're talking, these vegetarian diets are definitely a new experience when it comes to humanity. Like, we've been eating pastured ungulates for as long as we've been, able to throw a spear, throw a rock, chase things down.
And I even on the, there's kind of a growing movement now with sustainability, and you keep hearing this vegan diet is better for the environment, and it's even, I don't know, I haven't even read the whole thing, but there's this Green New Deal, and there's a lot of talk about reducing meat and that. And I mean, I even disagree with some of that on the, that it's more sustainable to only grow vegetables.
We're gonna,
I
can't wait to dive into that, but I want you to introduce yourself. Give us the Will Scholze story.
Yeah, so like I said, my name is Will Scholze. I'm actually a 4th generation dairy farmer. We're the 3rd generation on our current site. My grandparents bought where our main dairy is in 1949, and my dad grew up there, and then my brother and I grew up there, and came back to the farm. Both of us worked off the farm for a number of years, came back to the farm I came back in 2010. My brother came back in 2012, I believe it was, 12 or 13.
What were you doing? What was your sabbatical?
I was an electrician, actually, a journeyman electrician in Madison, Wisconsin. So it was good. When I was 18, I left the farm. I had zero interest in coming back to the farm. I was, not going to come back to the farm. And then ended up back on the farm after 8 years of being out someplace else.
I want to talk about that, because you originally, when you and I got in contact through the Farm Shed local food fair. Yep. Shout out Farm Shed, shout out Lane.
Yeah, that's a great event. Yep.
I love it. It's awesome to see it grow. And I was perusing through social media like there's a fine line between wasting time and networking.
And research.
And network. But yeah, I stumbled upon you guys, and you were the first Wisconsin beef farm that I stumbled upon. I'm not saying maybe you were the first, but
we're not by any means. We only started into beef about a year.
No, I meant on social media.
There's others.
Doing what you're doing on social media, like direct to the consumer, and then the shipping box, which we'll obviously get to, but just like reading the little bit on there. Like figuring out your guys' story, meeting you at the food fair. It was super busy, so I wasn't going to be like,
I didn't even remember
we should talk. I was just like chilling, watching you guys work. Busy, great product. Got the beef home. Had some like right away. It was delicious.
Yeah.
And then, but reaching out to you, and I know you've listened to like the Jared Ruby story.
Yeah, I've listened to your last several ones. Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I've listened to.
And what you just touched on with your own story about growing up in the farm, fourth generation, leaving, nothing, wanting nothing to do with it, but then finding your way back to it. And Jared kind of touches on that with like even the coffee farmers that he works with. Like you have to, obviously the children of the farm, they need that. You need that time away.
Yeah.
Figure out yourself, figure out what's going on, learn other skills, and then maybe farming isn't for you, and you move on, you do something else. But maybe through that process, through that journey, you rediscover like what it is you liked about farming. So, what was it for you?
It wasn't like there was any one aha moment. I mean, it wasn't anything like that.
It's not like the movies.
No, it was just it was honestly just a number of things. My dad was getting older, and I knew that this farm would end if someone didn't come back to it, and that. Not you can't go back and farm just for that reason, right? I mean, but it had an effect, thinking of all of his hard work, not being down the drain, but that it would end and the name would be gone and the land would be sold, and so that was part of it. And then I was working for a pretty large company and just not really happy with some of the culture things that were going on in the company. And I was getting bored with the job. Like I was a commercial industrial electrician. After a while, if you've been a commercial industrial electrician, it's about 95% running conduit, a lot of block buildings, and you kind of look down I remember having a time where I looked down it was one of the last jobs I was on. I looked down the hallway and I'm like, I could be building, it was actually a dormitory, but I'm like, this could be an office building, a school, a prison. Like they all kind of look the same. Like we're hooking up outlets and lights, and I'm kind of bored with it.
Yeah.
And I tried to get into some instrumentation stuff, and that kind of touches on some of the culture issue of the company. I wasn't very happy. I kind of took it upon myself to try to learn some stuff, and they kind of promised me that they would get me into some of that, and they didn't really have the work to get into, and I was kind of upset with that, and so I just was like, I'm kind of sick of this. And I look back at the farm, I'm like, there's so much variety. We're a dairy farm and a crop farm, so there's now a beef farm, but there's the genetics on the cows that is, that's fun to work on. There's the agronomy side, there's the machinery side, there's the HR side. We have employees, the business finance side of it.
What was the second word you said? The
agronomy side.
What does that mean?
Of like growing plants, of maximizing our yield out of the field.
Gotcha.
And technology. A lot of people don't realize how much technology is coming into farming these days with, GPS and guidance systems and placing nutrients exactly where they're needed for the crop. And we even go down to if we have a case of mastitis, we culture it on the farm in an incubator and to determine what kind of mastitis it is and how.
What's mastitis?
It's a infection in the cow's udder that a dairy cow can get. Actually, people can get it as well. I mean, it's a painful thing. And there's just the microbial side. I mean, there's just so much that you can work on a dairy farm. It isn't like you got to go in and do the same thing over and over. And I have maybe a little bit of ADD, so
perfect.
It's probably not a strength of mine is that I'm not very good at dialing into the last detail of things. I like having a big broad overview of a lot of different things, and so it was just I don't know another career that I can have that much variety in my work, right?
Yeah.
And coupled with the fact of not wanting to see the farm sold and not being happy with corporate culture, I guess, just was like, hey, you know what, I should come back and farm. I'd never talked about. My dad and I, we don't have real touchy-feely have heart-to-heart conversations on a regular basis, so we had never discussed it.
I hear you on that.
My dad never asked me to come back to the farm. I know he's glad that we did, that we did.
Just gave you the nod.
Yeah, I remember, I came home one weekend and I sat down with him and I said, Dad, I got something I want to tell you. And he where's this going? And told him that I wanted to come back to the farm, and he kind of swallowed hard and said, we got some thinking to do here. So,
I love it.
yeah, it's been because, most farmers, like all his retirement is tied up in this farm, so like we have to figure out how like my brother and I can buy in without, financially strapping the farm, and my dad can still retire and do what he wants to do. So it's been quite the process getting all that in place. And
Yeah.
so there were some long, painful meetings, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's been pretty good. It's been pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
I want to dive back into your relationship with your dad,
Yeah.
because that's definitely been something that's just weighted on me with almost losing my dad a few years ago with his heart attack, and he's been having all the complications, and same with my dad. He's not a touchy-feely kind of guy. He's becoming more of one. He now has chihuahuas. He's like a crazy chihuahua guy. If you would have asked me growing up, hey, your dad, or told me your dad's going to have chihuahuas, I'd be like, get the hell out of here. You're insane. Do you know my dad?
Right.
So something switched even with him, and now when he's much more open, and I'm like confused.
Right. Yeah.
But how does that affect your relationship with your children, Liam and Garrett?
It is something that I try to be a little more communicative of my feelings with Garrett. He's a baby, so you just hug him and kiss him, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I try to be a little more communicative of that with my son. It is something I've kind of made a conscious effort to do. I mean, to be a little more open about feelings and things. And
love it, man. It's awesome. Very cool. So going back to the farm.
Yeah.
Were those were the big reasons? Any other ones?
Yeah. No, those are the big ones.
Those are pretty big ones.
Yeah.
So and then at that time, you said back.
And farming was a lot better in those days, and so it looked like a way to make more money too.
Yeah, there you
go. If it was it was the last year or two, I'd have been like, what the hell do I want to do this for, right?
Exactly. So what exactly has changed in the last couple of years? Let's dive into that. And if there's anything you want me to look up, I can pull up on the other screen.
It's a whole number. There's no one thing. I mean, it's been an oversupply in the market for a number of years. I mean, of all commodities, milk, milk, corn, soybeans are the main commodities. Beef as well. I mean, there's just been an oversupply in the market, and the prices were really, really high. And so what happens when prices are really, really high? Everyone makes as much as they can, right?
Yep.
And there was a number of things that led to the prices being really, really high, including things like ethanol, ramping up in production, and now the market's kind of found a stability point, and trend line yields of everything continue to go up, and so there's just kind of an oversupply. And now, not to get into politics, but we've got some trade issues, and export market is massive to commodity farmers. I don't know what the exact numbers are off the top of my head, but a pretty significant amount of corn and soybeans and even milk, and it's a relatively small percentage of our overall production, but that's the 1 or 2% on commodity ag makes like a massive difference in the price, right? So we've lost some of that, and hopefully we get some of that back, but and then that this stuff was headed down before then. It's just been and I honestly, I'm a little bearish on some of these commodities, and that's part of the reason why we started into this direct-to-consumer beef thing. One of the reasons is, I do know it's around 40% of the corn grown in this country goes into ethanol production, right? And you can argue whether or not that's right. I'm, not intending to get into that, but, electric cars are coming fast and furious, right? And they're getting better and better.
Yep.
And they work for, a lot. If you drive less than 300 miles a day, an electric car works pretty dang good for you, right? And
I think that's what most people drive.
Right, exactly, right. Other than your long-distance trips, and they're coming on with ones that have a small gas motor that you can use on long-distance trips and stuff, Well, what's that do to ethanol production, right? It doesn't. And there's kind of this movement to increase ethanol blend requirements, but it doesn't, if ethanol blend requirements are 100%, which they never would be, of course, but it doesn't matter if people are driving electric cars, right?
Yep.
And I mean,
exactly.
that's 40% of our corn going into that. So
Mhm.
I'm kind of bearish on that. I mean, so
And how much of your because I've been reading some, obviously when you and I talk, do a little research, do a little deep diving, and I recently read Defending Beef. So like the case for why, and we'll get into all these other things, but why pasture beef is important, why it's important to have these animals on the environment, as well as what it's doing for what it does for the environment, what it does for people. But how much of your corn do you use for your cattle?
the majority of it. A few years ago, we used less of it. We've increased our cow numbers, and I've actually decreased the amount of corn we grow just because I can frankly buy corn cheaper than I can grow it. So what do I want to risk growing it for? And
Isn't that
wear
crazy?
out equipment and stuff, right? Right.
That's crazy. What about?
So I mean,
sorry.
100% of our corn right now, and in fact, we will be buying some corn this year for the dairy. So,
Nice.
And I plan. I mean, crop rotation I've got planned for this year would also have us buying corn next year. So.
And when it comes to, and I really want to learn about all this stuff.
Yep.
Going back to 2019 awareness, like corn subsidies, milk subsidies, all these words I hear thrown around. What does it all mean? Like what for you particular, for your specific farm?
I'm kind of anti-subsidies.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit of a free market person.
And why is that?
Well, I believe the subsidies kind of cause distortions in the market, and they've really made it so it's hard to grow things other than corn or soybeans.
That's what I've got sense from.
Yeah,
from reading.
and they've helped drive up some of the land prices because you can. They've taken some of the risk out of growing it, so like people just turn around and pay more to increase their acres, right? There's a little bit of confusion. There's not that many direct subsidies anymore for growing corn or soybeans or milk. There are some small ones, but they are like peanuts. But the biggest thing that's being subsidized is the crop insurance side of things.
Okay.
So you can buy crop insurance on a per acre basis, and there's a whole bunch of different options, and there's spreadsheets of various things that you can take. But generally, it's a revenue guarantee, and it's based on yield times price based on the Chicago Board of Trade, if you're familiar with that.
Nope.
So Chicago Board of Trade is what sets the commodity markets. It's traded somewhat like the stock market, except for they're trading futures. So it's people speculating on what the price of corn is going to be like next December. And I mean, they're trading I think it goes all the way out like 5 years out.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of like a way to set the commodity market prices, right? And that's a whole, it's similar to the stock market. I don't know how to describe it other than that. And you can you can have a hedging account, they call it, and you can sit there and speculate on that, and you can either lose a lot of money or make a lot of money or break even, whatever, I guess, depending on how smart you think you are, same as the stock market.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So anyway, so then they I forgot where I was going there.
I'm gonna be pestering you with questions.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine.
I'm excited to learn more about this.
So anyway, there's a kind of a revenue guarantee, and it's based off of your historical yields times the theoretical December price, and there's a price discovery period, and it's really complex, and I don't even know if anyone really fully understands it. So at the end of the day, your crop insurance hands you a number and says this is what your revenue guarantee is, and then you have to pay so many dollars per acre, and then you are guaranteeing that you will get that revenue that fall, but that your insurance is subsidized by the federal government through the Farm Bill. So it depends on what percentage of coverage you're going to take, how much the subsidy is, but it's as much as like 80% of the premium is paid by the federal government. So it's almost like you're almost foolish not to take it because it cost me so little to buy crop insurance to guarantee a certain set revenue, which is usually close to my break even. So because it's like, if it wasn't subsidized, you'd never buy it because it's going to be too expensive.
Yeah.
Like insurance companies are really good at they don't lose money very often,
right?
right?
They're good at what they do, which
yeah,
is making money.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really, and the one of my complaints with crop insurance is it works really good for grain corn. It works really good for soybeans. It doesn't work worth a shit for like corn silage, which I grow a lot of to feed the dairy. It doesn't work for alfalfa, which we grow a lot of to grow the dairy. It's certainly, I don't even think it's available for like vegetable crops. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. I don't grow any, so I don't look into it.
Yeah.
Some of these other specialty crops, they're just not even available because there's no one lobbying for the government to be frank, that's what's going on. So it's pushed a lot of agriculture into those two crops. And I mean, that it's not all, corn's a really useful product and so are soybeans in a lot of ways, but it's definitely distorted the market.
Yeah.
And like I said, it doesn't work very good for me for about, almost half of our acres are going into, probably more than half our acres are going into silage corn or alfalfa, and the insurance doesn't work for that at all. So, and it used to be that now they've changed that. It used to be you were required to buy crop insurance on all, if you were going to take any crop insurance, you had to take it on all your acres, even on stuff that didn't work for, like alfalfa and corn silage. And now they've changed that, so you don't only have to take it on your grain corn and stuff. But
gotcha.
Yeah,
nice, man.
So yeah, then what they do is come fall, you harvest your corn, and whatever your yield is, they take that times then what December's price is in the fall. So it'll pay out if either the price drops, and this sometimes it doesn't if you only take a yield guarantee, but most people take a revenue guarantee, because then if the price drops or you have low yield, either one, you're going to get a payout.
Yep.
Obviously, if the yield is above average and the price stays about the same, you're not going to get anything, or if the price is up or whatever. So it's
how often is it the price up or a crazy good yield?
We've had some really good yields the last few years, so we haven't paid out much. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
So you're asking how often it pays out? Is that kind of what you're asking? I don't know. I'm sure there's someone that could tell you what the percentage of payouts are. This is a shot in the dark. I'm going to guess somewhere around 30% of the time. I'm going to guess it has a payout of some kind. And that's a little bit of a shot in the dark. I'm sure someone could look up what the payout is. But
I'd attempt to, but I'm sure I won't be able to find it.
And it's kind of gotten like a lot of lenders are kind of, which I understand their point, are kind of, they're really requesting that farmers take crop insurance because they're protecting their revenue. Right, which is understandable. So and that's why I think I'm kind of against a lot of these subsidies. And on the dairy side, there used to be more subsidies. There's not very many now. There is now a revenue protection program similar to the crop insurance program that came out in the last farm bill. We are utilizing it. I'll be honest. We're utilizing it because it's cheap insurance. So why wouldn't you, right?
Yep.
Even though I'm kind of sort of against some of this stuff, everyone else is going to use it. I got to use it too, right?
Yeah.
So it remains. This is literally the first year of it, so it remains to be seen how it's going to work out exactly. It looks like it's going to work fairly well, but once again, it's a subsidized program, which is why it works. So, yeah. But there's not, like on dairy, there's not really any like direct payouts as people think. Like, a lot of people think these farm subsidies, like the government's cutting us a check. And that was the case, I guess, back in the 80s and even in the 90s, I believe. But I was not involved then, so I really just don't know anything about them. So
Gotcha. I like it. And your milk is delicious. I'm drinking some right now. So I appreciate that. Yeah. So how many acres do you have again of cropland?
We farm about 1,800 acres.
1,800 total. Yep. And then how much of that is pasture?
Well, that's just our cropland. Pasture, okay. We would have another probably 80 to 100 acres of pasture in there as well. Yep.
And how? Yep. And then we'll come back to the cows. And you just have cows.
What's that now?
At your farm? Just the
yes, we have milk cows and then now beef animals.
Beef
yes,
animals.
Yep. We do not have, and this is how we got into this beef thing. We got into this kind of a little bit accidentally, I guess. It was kind of one of them things. Once again, there was no one reason we got into it. So we used to raise all of our own heifers, which are, the young cow. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know what all you know about
Keep
this.
filling it all. Yeah, explain everything.
So, a heifer is your young calves before they're milking cows, right?
Yeah.
So we used to raise all of them ourselves on these pastures we had. They were overcrowded for the number of heifers that we had. They were not, so these animals were in mud a lot, and they didn't, because that's what cows do. If you got too many of them in there, they turn into mud. And wasn't a very good growing environment for heifers, just because of the overcrowding, and we couldn't manage them very properly. So we kind of, through coincidence, got in touch with a guy that was looking to simply raise heifers, a heifer grower, we call him. Had some really nice setups. We agreed upon a price for him to raise these heifers, and we moved all of our heifers to his farm. He's near Osseo, about 20 miles away from us. He can actually, this is crazy to think about, he can raise our heifers cheaper than we could raise them ourselves on the setup that we had, and we couldn't afford to build a fancy heifer growing setup. So then we had all these pastures sitting here, and kind of like, well, what are we going to do with these, right? They were, I should say pastures. They were kind of these lots, and just this area, this land that was not really farmable because it was too steep, and
which is the importance of having
right.
grazing ruminants.
Yeah. So, and then along the lines, we're transitioning our herd to Jersey milk cows, and we're doing that for efficiency's sake and fat and protein reasons in the milk, which is what we get paid off. And these little Jersey bull calves just aren't worth anything. So it's like, what do we do with these things, right? Like a Holstein, and there's a lot changing in the beef industry. It used to be a lot of Holstein beef, and that market's kind of changed due to some processing reasons, so the whole dairy, your beef, your calves, your bull calves were kind of going down in value anyway. So we're like, well, we just raise them to, I don't know if you know what feeder size is for beef.
Nope.
That's where you raise them to about 500 pounds roughly. And then they would go to a feed. They call that feeder size, or some people call it backgrounding them. You kind of wanted to get them to a certain frame size, and then they would go to a feed lot and get fattened up to be finished, is what they call it. And we were doing that, so we were just raising them to feeder, and we were getting quite a lot more money for them as feeder animals as opposed to selling them as calves.
And why do they get? Because a big part of this too, this reason I want to have this podcast with you is because you as a farmer, you're actually able to help educate people on where exactly food comes from. So what was done with the calves? Like, why are obviously I've told a few people, I'm like, hey, when cows are born, especially for milk cows, half of them right away are not able to be used, obviously, as male cows. So let's go through that process, what it looks like.
Like what do you mean?
For the male ones. So why are they being...
they are, essentially most of them go into the beef supply line. There are a few that are sold as veal calves, which is where they're only fed milk and then butchered while they're young. That industry is not very big. At least in this, it is a little bit weird, and it's a little, I kind of agree. I've never actually had veal. Supposedly it's really good, but anyway,
I like meat. The idea of that to me is kind of offensive. Like, I get it. Like, people are like, oh, tender, blah blah. I'm like, I want it to have some chewiness, some texture, because that tells me it lived a good life.
Right. And I don't know a lot about that industry, so I don't. Yeah, we don't. I don't. It's got a really bad reputation. I don't know how much of that's actually real, how much of it's
exactly.
Anyway, so most of those are usually to go to a sale barn, which is just an auction place. There's weekly auctions, and they're bought by cattle buyers that, usually they would go to someone that either backgrounds them or raise them to feeder size, and then they would go to feed lots where they're, pumped full as much grain as they can get in them, and butchered. So which is usually about from birth to, and it's the same for ours. We're finishing them about the same time. It's about a year and a half to 2 year long process from birth to when they are butchered. Usually.
Gotcha.
So
Okay. So you've changed it though. So you take yours and you raise them to feeder size.
That's what we were doing. We were taking them to feeder size, and we were getting more. And the reason why you get more money as a feeder is like with cattle, the hardest time and most expensive time is when they are calves. Like that's when you're most likely to have them die on you. And Jersey calves are a little bit finicky. Because they're a smaller animal, they can be a little tough to keep alive, especially in cold. Like this kind of weather is terrible for them because of the moisture and. And then when they've gone through a sale barn, they're stressed because they're loaded on a trail. They run through a sale barn where there's hundreds of other animals run through. They get exposed to different diseases, and then they're loaded on another trailer, hauled someplace else, dumped off. So a lot of stresses in them. So that's why if you can get them to feeder. Generally, cattle, if you get them past weaning, you really don't have much problem with cattle. Like, I mean, they just are, with the genetics we've got now, and if you put good feed in front of them, give them a dry place to lay and clean water, like, they're pretty bulletproof once they get to that size. So, so we were raising the feeder, and then we moved our heifers off site. So we had these pastures, and we're kind of like, hey, let's just raise these things and, finish them. We got these pastures, and then we also have, which is what we use to help us finish them. We fed. There's a lot of things that has kind of a complex deal here, but so we feed our dairy animals. We feed them every day, and then we clean up whatever they don't eat. We clean up at the end of the day, and that's something what we call refusals. Mm-hmm. So it's a high forage diet. It's corn silage, alfalfa, grain mixed in, minerals. But we want fresh feed in front of your dairy cows all the time. So we clean that up, and we used to feed that to our heifers, but now our heifers are off site, right? So we have this, it's good feed, but you always want fresh feed in front of your dairy cows. Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, we can use this to help us, raise these beef cattle or supplement them on pasture with this, Otherwise, we're going to be throwing this feed away, basically. Yeah. So we're like, yeah, let's raise them up. We can raise them really cheap because this feed has essentially been already paid for by the dairy, if you want to look at it that way, right? And it's a waste product in a way. And we've got these pastures that are already there. Like we're still doing some work on rehabbing them to do better rotational grazing and sexing them up better because we used to just dump the heifers out there and then it was not managed at all, and we're still working on that. Everything's a work in process. Nothing's perfect.
You've mentioned it multiple times throughout this already. The importance that growth and evolving and bettering your system.
So then somewhere along the line, I listened to a lot of weird things, and we were just going to send these because we could raise them fairly cheap. We're like, let's just send them to the sale barn. We'll get what we get, right? And then I happened to see Butcher Box that they raised $250,000 on Kickstarter. I don't know if you're familiar. Yep. I'm sure you're familiar with Kickstarter. And I'm like, what the hell? This guy's just going on and buying beef randomly, mm-hmm. and then stuffing it in a box and shipping it to people. Here's my stupidity. I'm like, that looks pretty damn easy, right? We got why can't I do it? So I even hopefully I'm not yelling too loud here. I get excited, but I actually started a Kickstarter campaign before. I'm like, I'll see if I could raise some money. I said Kickstarter works by if you don't reach your goal, you get $0. Yep. Right? So I set a really low goal, $5,000, and I think we got to $1,500 or something. But just one of the stupid things I did in my spare time on my computer at home. So anyway, we're like, well, let's try this of kind of a subscription model of shipping beef out. If they can do it, why can't why does some other guy go buy beef and do it? We have the product. We because we're a dairy, so a normal beef producer would go and buy this is kind of how the beef industry works. They're going to go buy 100 animals that are roughly the same size. It's a fairly common pen size on a beef feedlot. And they'll put them 100 cattle in a pen and feed them and then sell all 100 cattle at once, right? And they try to play the market to maximize their profit and stuff. But because we're a dairy, we've got calves continually coming. We're calving almost basically. We're milking about 500 cows, so we essentially have a calf hitting the ground every day, sometimes multiple calves a day. So we have a steady supply of calves. So that's how we're raising them. So we just have a we don't have a group of 100 cattle that's ready and then nothing. We just have continually cattle that are finishing, if that makes sense. So I'm like, well, we can do this on a subscription model, which has been harder than I ever, in my naivety, I slaughtered that word, but I thought it's pretty easy, right? This guy raised $250,000 on Kickstarter. I see his ad. Well, it's probably because I'm involved with. I see his ads all over, you know, and actually be pretty easy, pretty damn easy, right? But it's been hard, like, to get people to buy into that. So then, so we're just still trying to grow that. Yeah. And our plan was never to have an on-farm store. It was all to do shipping. We had so many people just saying, "Hey, can we stop and buy stuff on your farm?" That we went ahead and which actually wasn't legal, because you have to be licensed to have a retail location on your farm. You have to have an inspected place. So we went out and it's literally just the corner of a machine shed. We finished off, heated it, put freezers in there, got it inspected. And now that the nice thing is that we can do our shipping from there. So our shipping is done from there. So we literally go take the animals to the butcher them, haul everything back. He packages it in the individual shrink wrapped or vacuum sealed packages, and we bring it back to our on-farm store, which is also our, as I jokingly refer to it as our international shipping and distribution center. And ship it from there, and we're all licensed to do that. So the store is still very much a work in process. I don't even have the sign is on order. So people drive on the farm and they're like, "Where's this store at?" I'm like,
well, and you're well on your way though, because I've gotten the box now. Love the product. It's all tasted phenomenal, great quality. I've never had a cut or a roast or anything from it where I wasn't satisfied.
Yeah, glad to hear that.
So the product itself is quality, and now it's just it's us putting the word out there, getting the word out there, educating people about why your product is as good as it is.
And some of that is, as for why it is so good, is the Jersey meat. So our animals that we're finishing right now are essentially a Jersey Holstein cross, and the Jersey is known for it's very, very tender. I didn't even know this till relatively recent. They actually have shear tests that they do on meat, so they can actually measure the tenderness. Did you know that? So there's actually I don't know what the rating scale is, but there's actually a rating scale of tenderness of meat, and they actually put it in some kind of shear and measure the amount of force it takes to shear it. Crazy these things I've learned about beef in this process, right. But so it always ranks really, really high in that. It always ranks really, really high in marbling, which is any animal will put fat on, but they'll put it on the outside. But what really gives you high quality beef is the inner muscle marbling, and Jersey's is really good for that. And then we also work with we work closely with an animal nutritionalist to balance the diet of these animals so that they do grow properly. There's a ton of science on how you feed animals. It's just the same as nutrition on athletes or whatever. How you feed an animal affects how it's going to frame up, and so we work with animal nutritionalists, and we look at the pasture, and then we supplement that with we give we're not selling these as grass finished only beef, and that's a little bit of there actually isn't that much strictly grass finished beef. It's kind of if you read the fine print, they're usually giving it some grain to finish, and it was explained to me one time, you could eat nothing but salad, but you're not going to size up very good either, right? I mean, it'd be no different than if you feed a cow nothing but grass all the time. That animal's not going to grow very good. It's just the reality of it.
Yeah, for sure. And what you touched on it a little bit ago, the marbling, the taste. What is culture we've kind of come to expect, and what does taste good, having that fat, that marbling in there. And
the Jersey meat is known for being more flavorful as well. And they've actually, this has all been studied and then actually documented that this stuff. You can call it a downside or whatever of the Jersey animal is the cuts. They're a smaller framed animal, which touches back on efficiency, so they're more feed efficient animal because they're smaller. But so some of the cuts are smaller, and you'll see that in some of the steaks that you get, which is. It's good and bad. Some people want that massive 24-ounce steak, but reality is most of us, if we're going to eat a meal, you don't need that big of a steak, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Other than it looks awesome to have a a steak that's as big as your plate,
As big as the plate. And when I made the first which steaks did I make?
I sent you some ribeyes.
Ribeye, yeah, we made the ribeye.
You would have had some New York strips and some sirloins in the first box as well.
Yep, we had the ribeye, and we're eating it, and Rissa looks at me. She's like, "Yeah, way better than venison." And I'm like,
"Yeah,
I'd
have to agree with her."
I'm like, "Damn it!" She's like, "We're keeping we're gonna keep doing this." I'm like, yeah. I'm like, "Yeah, that's the point." But,
So yeah, and then we're at we just had the first calves born. So like, to go back to this, half of the calves, being bull calves, that's actually not 100% true anymore with the way the dairy industries went. They actually have what they call sex semen now. So like, you can actually
Science
choose.
Is crazy.
It is. And which I sometimes get in a little bit of trouble, and farmers get in trouble because a lot of us love the science of it, and it's not been very well articulated to the public. Like, it's like evil science in Monsanto, right? Like, and I kind of disagree with that. A lot of this stuff has been very good. It just hasn't been like marketed very well.
Farmers have maybe, or the ag, I should say, not farmers, but maybe ag has poor PR.
I agree completely. And the attitude in ag, very much. I'm very active on Twitter, and there's a lot of farmers on there, and like, the attitude is very much, and I disagree with this, is very much like, we know what the hell we're doing. Like, consumers should shut the hell up. Like, we're doing a good job. And I 100% agree that ag is, I think there's way more good in ag than there is bad, even on the like large scale side of things. But I think we need to change our attitude a little bit and like listen to what consumers are saying. And then find a way to educate consumers on what we're doing, why we're doing it, that it's not like this like monstrous thing. But anyway, back to my point on, so we were able to take like our top, like our best dairy cows, and we breed them to sex semen so that we only get heifer calves from them, nice. Which in theory is your best cows, yep. Right? So in theory, you're like making your herd better. And then we can take the bottom end of the herd and breed them to a beef breed. So we're now breeding them to Limousine, which most people don't know. I mean, most people think there's Angus and then like whatever else, right? There's like tons of different beef breeds, and they all have different reasons depending on where they're being raised and stuff. But Limousine is one of the big advantages to them is they're a longer framed animal, which means like you're going to get more ribeyes out of them, more T-bones. Like, so kind of your perfect beef animal is short and long, because then you got more cuts.
Yeah.
And, you don't want a real leggy animal. So a Limousine is a longer framed animal. They should finish a little heavier, so some of the cuts will be a little bit bigger, but still have the Jersey tenderness. So those calves, I think the first ones were born about 2 months ago of the Jersey Limousine crosses. So kind of excited to see them come through and see. And we're actually working with going to start working with one of the genetics companies. They want to, because this breeding Jersey to beef is actually relatively new in the industry. There's people been doing it, but as far as on a more commercial scale, and there's a lot of dairies are switching to Jerseys, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. So there's like a feeling in the industry there's going to be a lot more of this Jersey beef, and we kind of need to figure out how to like make it work, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to start working with a genetic company that we're going to track these animals all the way through from like birth, what the genetics of that animal was at birth, all the way through how did we feed it, and then like after it's butchered, how does the I don't know if you know what carcass scores are in the beef industry. Nope. Like that's where you get your prime, choice, and all that. That's what they call a carcass score. And then there's yield, which is how much actual like usable meat cuts come off that animal. Like, so they're going to actually score them animals and then track that back through the feeding program. And so I'm kind of excited about that because I love that. Like,
I love all the research.
I do. I love that, kind of nerd out on that a little bit, actually, and maybe get off on, maybe some people don't care about that sort of thing.
No, I love it. I think there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are very nerdy and love all this other stuff because, once again, this is how we learn where our food comes from. This is how we learn the systems, bring awareness to how we can improve as, obviously you're doing it as a farmer, constantly looking for ways to improve. But how do we improve as consumers? Which is really cool. Django's when you were talking about like how you nerding out on how to get what animal husbandry for beef or what breeding it. It reminds me a lot of like dogs. Like there's always the big thing in like adopt, don't shop or whatever like that.
Yeah.
But it's like, but if you want top quality dog companion hunting working, you want someone who's breeding it properly. Like looking for all these like details, the nuance, looking at the lineage, looking at like how the dog behaves, temperament, size. Like that's the person you want, the person that geeks out on that stuff, that nerds out. So in that regard, you are shopping, but you're shopping for a quality breeder like yourself, who's looking at all these things, looking at the research, the trends. And Django's his breeders, Jay, the husband, so it was Jay and Sue. Jay actually he works then for a cow or beef or cattle insemination company. So like that's what he does.
Which one does he work for? Do you know?
I can't remember like a
There's
big
only
one.
A couple of them. In
the big one. He was talking about, like how they've bought out most of their monopoly of cattle insemination.
That's the down. I mean, if I have any like complaint about modern agriculture and these big companies, has been all the mergers, and it is down to, Monsanto was just bought, the big evil Monsanto was bought by Bayer, which I have to laugh. Bayer was like 3 times the size of Monsanto. People are like, oh, big evil Monsanto. Like, no, they actually weren't that big in the ag space, believe it or not.
Just a tiny little, like a medium-sized northern in the pool of fish.
And that, they're, because of the bad PR, the Monsanto name is going to cease to exist, and it's going to be under Bayer. That's just how it worked. But yeah, everything is consolidated in the industry, and that's it's a little bit concerning, I think, the consolidation, and it's what we're really seeing is that it's squeezing the farmer, is what it's doing, because we're stuck between gigantic companies now on the supply side and gigantic companies on the processing side, and we're kind of stuck in the middle, and those companies like never lose money, right? So who's the one, like, and no matter what, commodity prices are going to go up and down, right? I mean, that's just what commodity markets do. But we're kind of the ones that are stuck in the middle, and that's another reason why we're kind of trying to move towards doing this direct-to-consumer beef is to, well, right now it's a pretty tiny percentage of our business. We're far and away dairy is our big source of income on our business, but we're trying to diversify a little bit and get into this beef, and then we're decoupled from the commodity market a little bit. We're doing the we're setting our price, and we're supplying the consumer. So
I love it.
Yeah.
That's why everyone right now pause the podcast and go order yourself a Scholze beef box.
And our website is just ScholzeFamilyBeef.com. I'm sure he'll have a link to that.
Thing. Scholze Family Farms right here.
Yeah. Well, we have Scholze Family Farms, and then there's Scholze Family Beef is where you order. Because, we originally started, I never intended to do this beef thing, right? So we had a website, just kind of information about the farm, which was Scholze Family Farms, which there should be a link pretty prominently on that now to get you to the beef page. And I've talked to you a little bit about this, Bill. We are in the process of designing a new website. Our current website literally was done by my wife at our kitchen table between, dealing with kids. So
your wife is a badass.
I agree completely. It's a really good website. There's some struggles on the back end more than there is on the front end of having it how we want for order. What's the word I'm looking for order fulfillment. And so we broke down and are spending the money to have someone build us a new website, which will hopefully be live in May, I believe, is our target date on that. And I know I shared the preview with you there, Bill. I don't know, hopefully you thought it looked all right. But
looked good to me.
So forgive our website a little bit if you have any, absolutely shoot us an email or call us if there's something you don't see on there. If you want to put together your own package, because we kind of have some pre-made packages in there.
I'm looking at them right now.
Absolutely shoot us an email. Say, hey, look, I don't want this. I want something else. We'll put it together, figure out a price for you. More than willing to do that.
Steak Lovers box. Yes.
Yeah.
Grill Masters box. I love it.
Yeah, we don't, it's just hard to know what people are going to want, right? So we've put together these boxes, what we think people are going to want, but that's one thing I've learned is that trying to predict what people actually want is I've given up on it. Like just so absolutely, if there's something that you want, shoot us an email and we'll do our best to provide, to put that together for you. So
yeah. So let's you wanna talk a little bit about just like, so you touched on it a little bit. You were talking about like the steep terrain of your pastures and how like you couldn't farm it. There's no way you could get machinery or just like wind erosion, water erosion. But like if you leave it pasture, native crop, and I'm sure you kind of touched on it too. You're looking at like what's on the pasture, the quality of the food.
Yep.
How important is it to have ruminants though, like out there chewing on it, pushing it down, allowing it to grow and prosper?
Yeah, I don't claim to be an expert on that by any means, but if you look back historically at how land was before, it was, everything's been modified now, but there was the bison herds and stuff, and they would come through and intensively graze, and I couldn't exactly tell you the biology as to why this is good for it, but like they intensively graze it down. I guess this is what the bison herd would do, and so this is what we're kind of trying to replicate. Not that bisons were in Wisconsin, but
we did have elk.
We did have elk, and they're in the I have seen them in the Black River Forest, not that far from us.
How crazy was that?
They are massive animals. I sort of hope they don't make it over to my farm fields, is what I have to say. But anyway, so
you're gonna be out in your cornfield, and all of a sudden you're gonna kick out a herd of elk that are just fat in there,
and they're just gonna flatten everything. Yeah, not looking forward to that. Anyway,
will you get a landowner permit, you think? I'll have to ask my DNR friends.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do on that.
They should subsidize you somehow, and I'd rather take a
right.
If you're going to get anything, be like elk meat in the freezer.
Right? Yeah. I have my brother-in-law hunt elk, and I've had it. It's very good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I forgot where we were going. Anyway, I talked about this grazing. Yep. So what we're trying to do is have these animals come through, graze the grass down aggressively. They go to the bathroom on it, which is fertilizing it, and then move them off that pasture and allow that grass to recover is what we're not 100% there yet. We're still working. We have it's a big project. We tried to get it done last summer, but we had a number of issues that happened on the farm that prevented this from happening last year. But this summer we need to get working on it, of separating these pastures out better, so we can, you literally want them on there for a day or two, graze that down like short, get them off there, allow that pasture to recover. And I'm sure someone smarter than me could tell you exactly why that's good for the ground. But if you're getting them off there, you're not going to get the erosion, because they're not ever taking anything down to like mud, killing the vegetation. And the vegetation is more nutrient dense when it's smaller. So like it's not
it's
good.
Constantly going through rebirth, regrowth.
Yeah, and it also, if you really want to get into it, it's actually sequestering carbon in the soil as well.
I was just going to touch on the carbon part of it.
Yeah, which I do not claim to be any kind of expert on exactly, but you're certainly not disturbing that soil, because every time you disturb the soil, you're releasing carbon out of the soil and losing organic matter in the soil.
So people who are like greenhouse gases and environmental concerns, who are like, oh, we need more vegetables, you're putting more carbon back into the atmosphere.
Correct. Yeah. and the other thing about animals and is that, manure is one of the best fertilizers.
I like the way you say that.
And
I like that.
And so we use it, even on our dairy, and it's just kind of one of them things that makes me roll my eyes a little bit about some of the anti-agriculture stuff we see. Like a large farm, you've got manure, that's a toxic waste, but the small farm,
yeah, exactly.
So the idea on even a large dairy is that you capture all your manure in a lagoon, and you go and apply that at timing where it's not going to leach out and the crop can utilize it. And we see that majority of our manure, just because of cost-wise, gets put on close to our dairy. And a lot of that land, we never put any other kind of fertilizer on it. Well, if there's corn on it, we'll come back mid-season and put a shot of nitrogen on it, because nitrogen doesn't stay in the soil very good. So we want to get it on close to the corn uptaking it so it doesn't leach out.
Yeah.
But we're not putting any other commercial fertilizer on that, strictly because of the dairy manure going on it. Now, our land that's farther away that we can't get manure to, we're having to put other commercial fertilizers on it to maintain the soil fertility. And that's kind of what I think is missing in this discussion of going to a vegan diet is better for the environment. Well, I mean, I think they're only looking at one piece of the public. I don't think I think we're kidding ourselves if anyone thinks they really know the answer to all this stuff, right?
Agreed.
I mean, the world is such a complex place, and there's so many systems. I mean, we're still learning, like, there's millions of microbes in the soil, and it's like a huge field in agriculture right now of learning how these microbes work, and there's even companies coming out with biological things that they think they can grow these microbes better so they'll generate some of their own nutrients better and then actually fight off some of the pests and stuff. That's kind of a growing, and I haven't spent a lot of time looking into it yet, but it's certainly valid science-wise, and we're still learning about it. So anyone can sit there and say, well, we got to do X, Y, and Z. I'm not saying that we don't need to keep moving towards some of this stuff, but like if anyone's going to sit there and say they know the definitive answer to any of these problems, I mean, I'm going to call you a liar. I'm sorry, I am.
Yeah.
It's just so that's what I think is missing is this animal. Like I said, the manure is just an excellent nutrient source for us, and really allows us to cut down on other fertilizer applications. And so I think animal agriculture is important, and I don't know a lot about vegetable production, but it's pretty intensive on the management side, and there's a lot of tillage and stuff done in that, which is kind of bad for the soil as well and stuff too. So I mean, obviously we need our vegetables. I'm not, I'm not denying that at all. But I would agree that I don't think a vegan diet is the answer for. I mean, I certainly, if someone wants to be a vegan, I'm not going to even.
No, not at all. I touched on it earlier. Is especially if the conversation centers around your personal ethical beliefs around it.
Yeah, all
for it. It's when it starts pushing on people like, no, this is optimal health. Like, no research proves that. No system research proves that for both at an individual person level for human physiology or even at a greater wide system level. Like there is no natural system where monocrops exist. Monocrops are something we've genetically engineered to exist on the landscape. So that's always something you got to think about. Like no system exists where it's like that.
Yeah.
So, and then there's, I'm trying to find it right now, but I'm struggling. I need a better internet search. But so when you're looking, especially at the way you guys are raising beef, where they're eating the native grass, the pasture, and then we're supplementing, but the energy that we gain from that. So like, they're eating, they're growing the grass that we wouldn't be able to eat. Right. Like we can't eat that and survive. So they're able to convert that into energy. We then process the animal, eat the animal, converts it into energy for us. Correct. Part of this greater food system.
Yeah, and that's the other argument I have with the vegan only, and that one of the arguments is, well, you could grow more food on an acre of land if it's vegetables only, as opposed to raising feed for animals. And there's some truth to that, but it also depends on the landscape. I don't know if you've been out west. My sister lives in Wyoming, and they grow cattle out there on ground that is like, we certainly couldn't grow vegetables on some of that ground out there in Wyoming, and they can grow cattle on there. So like this idea that all this ground that's used for cattle production could be used for vegetable production is just not true. I mean, it's and
I agree.
Yeah. So, that's one of those, gigantic questions that's in society right now that I don't think any of us have the answer for, but it's like I said, I certainly believe that that there's a place for animal agriculture in food systems and I
love it, man. So. I'm gonna try to bring up as many of these for people in the show notes where they can reach out, kind of read, find their own. I'm not saying, and we've discussed this entire time. We don't have the one specific answer. We don't think there is one.
I don't think there is one. No, and I think I don't think there is. I'll be straight up honest with you. We didn't get into this beef because we think we're like saving the world. Like we got into this to make more money. I mean, that's what and
there's like I work with my coaches, and I was even talking to some student athletic trainers and just athletic trainers in general this week. It's like we're not snake oil salesmen.
Right.
You're not trying to swindle someone out of their money just because you want money. You have, in your case, you have a valuable beef product.
Right.
That's we're creating local. It's been shown to be healthy. Like, we need protein. Mm-hmm. It's something you would give your grandma. I always tell them that, like, is what you're selling something you would give your grandmother?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Yes.
Yeah.
Then we have. It's okay to make a living off of it. It's okay to sell it to people, to educate people on it.
Right.
If you wouldn't give it to your grandma, okay, all right, let's start to have the conversation. Why wouldn't you give it to your grandma?
And like, back to this agriculture, and there's kind of this, like, big agriculture is bad and stuff, and we're doing all these toxic things. And I farm literally within feet of my house, 360 degrees around my house. To the one side there's a road between my house and the next field, and the other side is literally 50 feet from my house to the fields that we farm, no different than we farm any other fields. And I've got a 4-year-old kid, and he runs through the fields, and I've got no problems with that. I mean, there's certain times, if we do, we spray. I'm not an organic farm. If we come through with an insecticide application, I'm not going to let my kid run out and play there until there's withholding labels on all this stuff. But, I spread, much to my wife's dismay, we spread manure right up to our edge of our yard too. So, and I drink the milk out of my bulk tank. I kind of cut back on that because I'm trying to lose some weight, and it's high in fat and protein. So
good. It's delicious.
And I eat our beef, and farm right up to my doorstep. So I'm not doing anything that, like, would I do that up to my doorstep if I thought I was doing something that was wrong? I mean, I wouldn't, So that's what I hope that, like, people understand when they're buying beef from me. Like, I'm like, this is how I think food should be raised. Like, and do you trust me that I am generally going to do the right thing, right? Like, is everything perfect in farming? Absolutely not. I'm not going to pretend that it is. But generally, do you trust that I'm doing the right thing?
No.
And you have to answer, and hopefully I can earn your trust on that, I guess is what I'm saying. And, like,
I think you've done a great job today.
Hopefully. And there's this whole, like, everything's labeled organic these days, and that's...
You can pay to get that, though.
Yeah, and there's a fair amount of that organic labeled food that comes from overseas. And, like, okay, Whole Foods got in trouble a few years ago. They were selling vegetables that were labeled California vegetable blend or something. Well, on the back it said product of China. Like, let's, like, be honest here. We know enough about China. Do you really trust that China is, like, sending over stuff that's been organically raised how you think it's been raised? I mean, let's be real here. I guess I'd rather buy something from someone that I know. I mean, the U.S. has, like, the best, safest food source in the world. I firmly believe that. So would you rather buy something from the U.S. that's not labeled organic, or would you rather buy organic from China? I guess. I mean, and I don't know if they still do that. I'm throwing them. I know they got in trouble for it a few years ago, and they kind of had to eat some crow on that. And, and being in agriculture, I see a lot of stories that other people probably don't see. I know there's been boatloads of product that left the U.S. as conventional and somehow came back as organic. So
weird.
Yeah, I know that has happened. You won't find that in the news, but there's some. I don't even remember what country it is, but it's like the largest exporter of like organic grain. And there's a lot of people that have done, like, satellite imagery and stuff, and they're like, yeah, there's no way this country can even produce as much grain as they export as organic grain. So, like, what's going on here? Like, well, you can figure out what's going on.
So that's exactly.
So, and I don't mean to be like, yeah, I got to be careful what I say. I'll get in trouble here. But
well, no, what you are saying is the importance of buying local, like talking to your local farmer, understanding where it's coming from, not just going off of a buzzword.
Right, exactly.
That's written on a label.
And it's the same with this
a cartoon animal.
Yeah, I agree completely. And there's, well, back to this butcher box, and once I don't really mean to pick on them, but it's kind of where I got some of the idea for this. And they source a fair amount of their beef from New Zealand, I believe it actually comes from, and they only sell grass-fed beef, and that's why they have to source a lot of it from New Zealand, because New Zealand has I'd actually love to go visit New Zealand because they have an excellent grazing dairy herd, one of the biggest exporters of dairy products. So they've really figured out this grazing system, and I can go visit that in the wintertime, right?
Yeah, right.
Because it's warm there.
Be fantastic there.
And you can do these motorcycle tours. It's on my bucket list. But anyway, yeah, that's where they source a lot of their beef, and which is fine. I believe in it's a global economy. I believe in everyone in the world needs to eat, right?
Yep.
And so there's nothing really wrong with that. And people will say, well, how come your beef isn't grass finished? And I'm like, well, grass doesn't grow year round in Wisconsin, right? So we can't. So that's why we're supplementing, and so is it really better if it's 100% grass finished and imported to the U.S.? What's really better? I mean, I don't know, and everyone has to answer that question for themselves, I guess. I
love it.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So I want to touch a little bit too before we get rolling here, but with the ethical conversation. I don't know how comfortable you are talking about it. And
no, I'm fine with that.
We talked about your farm dog. We talked about
my mutt there. We
mutt.
Just talked about high breeding, and I got it was a free puppies sign on my neighbors, and my wife stopped that one's cute. So
hey, you gave it a good home.
Yeah,
you gave it a good home. Far worse fate could have befall that dog, but so the ethical conversation. And I always like talking about this with people because obviously it's a big part of hunting.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I love animals, love going out in the woods, but then at the same time it's well, how do you wrestle with the fact that you have to kill the animal? So for me it's deer. For you, I'm sure you interact with these cows every day. You see their individual characteristics, their traits. So what does that look like for you? What's your personal philosophy on it?
I guess I don't. That's an interesting question. I don't know that I have one. I grew up on a farm, and I think with animals, and I think you learn at a young age when you grow up on a farm that animals do die. I mean, to be blunt,
we all die.
Yeah, we all die. And on a farm, we always had farm kittens growing up and stuff like that, and the life expectancy of farm kittens isn't very good. They get stepped on by cows and ran over by things, and so you kind of learn maybe a little faster than other kids that your pets aren't forever, and I mean, I guess to not get into religion, but I am a religious person, so, and so I kind of believe that it's perfectly fine for us to eat animals, and so I guess I don't have any super deep philosophical thoughts on that, but
no, man,
I kind of believe but I do believe in being kind to animals. We're not going to do anything that's intentionally cruel to animals or anything. Have things happen where an animal's been injured or something? Absolutely, that happens. I mean, it's
part
you
of
have
life.
Animals, something's going to happen at some point in time. I mean, it's just what happens. But we just believe, and we participate in a program called FARM, which is FARM, and it's Farmers Assuring Responsible Management, I believe is what it stands for, and it kind of touches on that. They walk through your farm and view how you treat your animals, and if there's any obvious excessive amounts of injuries or anything like that, and cleanliness, and then it's a certification that you have on that and part of it is you have to have policies in place where no one can abuse animals, and if someone does see someone else abusing an animal, they have to report it, and and the dairy industry does very well because a dairy animal absolutely responds to their environment as far as if a dairy animal is not treated very good, she tends to not produce very good. That's
right.
just a simple fact of life. And I know there's other industries that struggle with that a little bit especially on like the hogs and poultry side. And I don't claim to be an expert on that, so I don't really want to get into it.
We don't have to.
But on dairy, even on large farms, I mean, it just, and you see these videos come out and they kind of make my blood boil a little bit. Like Peter will put out these videos of like animals being mistreated on dairies. And I know I've been around cattle my whole life. I can see that some of these videos are clearly, if they're not staged, they're a little bit set up and they're not what's normally going on in that dairy, because I can look at the animals and see how the animals are reacting to the people and see that that's like not how that animal is normally treated. Like, so they either like encourage someone to do something bad or something, like that's not what's normally going on in those dairies. Like if you see someone walk into a group of cows and start like beating on the cows and all the cows like stand there like what the hell, like that's not happening on a regular basis, because those cows would be like running away from the people. Like I know that because I've been around cattle my entire life, right? But people, like a lot of people have never been around cattle, so they think, well, that must be what they're doing like all the time. I'm like, no. It's not. Like, I cannot prove that to you by like, right? But I like know that by looking at a video and seeing like, so some of those kind of, you know, so that's my belief, I guess. Like if we treat these animals, I had a friend of mine raising beef, and he's like, yeah, we try to give our beef a really, really good life and then one really bad day. So to be a little bit cruel there. No, so
that's that you just nailed it, man. Like some groups, they post these videos where it's like they're playing to people's emotions, because if you don't know anything about cattle, you've never been around them, you don't know all these little these like normal ways they kind of operate, they respond to things. You're gonna see that, you're like, holy shit, that's some crazy shit going on. You watch it, and it's kind of like me when I see a movement video. Like I can pick out all these little discrepancies. When you see it, you can like evaluate like how the rest of the herd is reacting, how that individual is reacting, and be able to say like, yeah, that's not something that happens there very often, because the cattle are smart. They would respond to it.
I mean, cattle actually have, I mean, we always joke how stupid they are, but that's just, your frustration dealing. But actually, I mean, they have really good memories, and they like remember bad experiences really, really. So it's actually really important, like particularly the first time an animal is handled or goes like through the milking parlor or something, like you want that to be a good experience for the animal, because if it's not, they remember that, and it's actually really hard to get. And there's actually been a ton of research done on this. Like it's the same with your first impression of something. Like it's really hard to change your first impression, and it's no different with that with cattle. So like I said, I'm not by any means trying to claim that anyone is perfect or everything is always perfect, but I think we do a good job of making a good life for these animals to the best that we can. And I guess I just have never really grappled with the like that these animals then have to die for us to eat them. I guess that's just never really been something that I.
Well, no, you answered the question perfectly. Like you nailed it. You nailed it, man. You touched on it. That's exactly because for you. Jacob's drinking in the bathroom. But for you, you've been in the circle of life your entire life. You're generationally, like your entire life. So for you, you understand it better than anyone. Better than any of us. Because you see it on a daily basis. You're with that animal from birth to death. Like you can't be any more involved than that. And like you were just talking about the research and psychology of cattle. Like you touched on it. No, man, like your answer was more in depth than anyone else could provide, other than like, oh, I read a book once, or I watched a video of a cow. Come on.
YouTube is a blessing and a curse, right? Like we've all wanted to know how to do something, so we've looked it up on YouTube, and I've fixed my dishwasher off of YouTube.
I fixed my old car off.
Right, yeah, exactly. But it also like, being a YouTube expert is dangerous. I agree completely. And then like,
especially when you're like, I'm an animal welfare expert off a video I watched on YouTube. I'm going to tell this guy who's farming hey,
Yeah, and there's some documentaries that have come out that have had some really questionable stuff in it.
They drive me crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm happy you came on here because this is what I want more people to see and listen and hear.
I mean, absolutely. Like, if anyone wants to stop at our farm, like, you can come and walk through our farm. Like, and I think almost any, like, farmers, like, almost every farmer I know, like, loves what they're doing, and we are, like, proud of what we're doing. Like, almost any farmer, like, as long as you make sure he's not, like, swamp busy and, like, you're not an asshole about it, is probably going to be, like, fine with you coming out, and he's probably more than happy to explain what he's doing, what he's working on. Probably can even get him to tell you, like, what's not very good and what he wants to improve. But, like, you know, reality is we can't afford to do everything we want to do all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even big, I don't know if you've ever heard of Riverview Dairy. You probably haven't. They're not.
Nope.
They're one of that. You can Google them. They're maybe the biggest dairy in the U.S. They milk something like 100,000 cows on I don't know how many different sites. I've met one of the main owners of it, and I know a guy very well that does a significant amount of forage harvesting and manure hauling for him. These places, you can walk into them and tour them, I believe, 6 days a week with no appointment. They run tours on them. They are the most, both impressive because they're big, but also impressive as to how clean they are, how good the animals look. And to tell a little bit of a story about how they are in the community, the guy I know that is involved with harvesting for them was involved with permitting their first site in Minnesota, and they had to fight. Like, everyone was against this massive dairy coming in. Somewhat, I get some of the fears. They had to fight for several years to get the permits. They finally got the permits, put the dairy in. They've put in several dairies since then in the area. They just permitted for another one. Mike, the guy I know, was at the meeting where the permit was going in. There was 50-some people that showed up to this meeting to comment on, public comment on this. Every single one of them was in support of them bringing another dairy in. 0 people showed up to fight them bringing another dairy in.
Nice.
And I tell that story just to show, like just because a farm is large doesn't mean that they're bad, right? And they do as any farm I ever know, I think Riverview does a great job on educating and, like, the good things about agriculture. And I economically have some concerns about what they're doing just for the dairy industry in general, being a dairyman, but I think they do a very good job on the cattle and people and being a steward of the land and being good community members. And, all you ever hear from anyone else is how, like, big dairies or, big farm is bad. And I just,
not all bad.
It kind of grates on me a little bit, I guess. Like, as I'm not saying that there isn't bad actors but if you know about cattle, you can walk into a dairy and I can tell you, like, if the cattle look good, like, there's just things you look for, body condition and, hawk lesions and stuff like that. You can just walk in and it doesn't matter if a dairy is big or, I've seen bad cattle on big farms. I've seen bad cattle on little farms. I've seen good cattle on big farms and good cattle on,
Yep.
But yeah, that's a soapbox a little bit there that, like,
loved every moment of it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
Well, I guess we didn't really touch on, like, some of the benefits, and you can look this stuff up, maybe post some links to it of grass-fed beef there.
Oh, yeah.
Of a higher forage diet, as opposed to a, strictly grain-based diet. So I had a couple notes here. It has less monosaturated fat, I know, which I believe you're more of a nutrition expert than me, is the bad fat for you, isn't it?
Can be. Yes, sir.
It's higher in omega-3s, and I can send you some links if you can't find these. It's supposed to be up to 5 times higher in omega-3s. And I'll allow you to fill in as the nutrition expert in this conversation.
Hey, I'm not the nutrition expert either, but
and then it's higher in conjugated leonic acid, which is CLA.
Yep.
And it's higher in vitamin A and higher in vitamin E. So those are kind of the benefits of grass-fed beef, I guess. So, yeah.
No, I love it all. Yeah, I'm definitely going to post that in the I can't believe I forgot to talk about that.
And I actually thought, excuse me, but I couldn't find it when I was researching this here. I actually thought that the Jersey breed itself was higher in some of these but I couldn't find any like kind of a believer. If you're going to make a claim, you got to have some kind of like paper to back it up. And I couldn't really find anything on that, so I'll just have to pass on that, I guess. But I thought that there was some. I'll maybe do some digging and send it to you if I find it. And then just the jersey in general, it is more efficient at converting. So, like, if you're back to a sustainable model, like the jersey is more efficient at converting feed to beef. So, like, that's what it's all about, right? I mean, most efficient way to generate beef, and
Exactly.
it's high quality and tender and good in flavor and marbling. So
Here we go. I'll start reading a little bit. Cholesterol content of grass-fed beef has been repeated to be lower than the cholesterol content in beef from conventionally fed animals, and the beauty of that I like to talk to people about is because they're like, well, you can't eat cholesterol, you can't eat red meat, right? Because the common belief for a lot of people is the cholesterol in meat is what raises your cholesterol. Well, that's false, because is a cow eating beef? Is a cow eating red meat? No, right?
No.
Yet they have high cholesterol. It's because then this article is showing that, like, your cows, they're eating pasture, they're eating a high forage diet, which is also in this article.
Mm-hmm.
The ones they're comparing it to are classic feedlot animals, which are being fed primarily starches, grains, right?
Yep.
That's what's causing it.
Mm-hmm.
Not eating high red meats, all this other stuff. We're seeing it in the animals.
Yeah.
So it's when people are like, oh, you can't eat meat that has cholesterol. Well, take your boneless, skinless chicken breast, go to hell.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick with it. But
it goes back to the same, like, it's kind of funny, like, dietary recommendations like continue to change all the time. Like, right. So none of this stuff is
because they were primarily created during the Depression era. Right. It was, hey, this is the bare minimum we need to survive.
Right.
Not optimize, perform.
Right.
Bare minimum to survive. So that's something that's coming up. But yeah, like this right here is what I'm trying to say is, like, it's not when people are like, oh, you can't eat red meat, the cholesterol in it. That's not how it works.
Right.
It's being created by other systemic physiological effects in your body, and a big one being high grain, high starch, blood sugar related, those kind of things. So once again, I'm not the nutrition expert either.
I thought you were.
I enjoy eating. I enjoy reading the research, but with my degree, athletic training, we obviously talk about it. Mm-hmm. But even as such, it's very a limited scope. Mm-hmm. But I enjoy reading. I enjoy talking to people like yourself who farm, who grow our food, who raise our food. But no, the information is out there.
Are we running out of time here? Or
we got time.
Okay. Well, because the other thing I wanted to touch on a little bit.
I'll do show notes for this
about the like sustainability portion that I forgot to mention of beef is that, like, yeah, you touched on it. A ruminant, they're like really good at taking things that we can't digest and making into delicious beef, which we can digest, right? Yep. And touching, like, and this goes back into the ethanol thing a little bit, like, so ethanol is made, and then there's like byproducts from ethanol. There's distillers grains and corn gluten. Like,
you had me at distilled.
Yeah. Well, I guess distillers grains would technically come from the alcohol, but anyway. Like, so a ruminant can then take those things that we can't even process, right, and then turn that into beef, and that's kind of a recycling. That is not kind of, it is.
It is recycling.
So, like, in defense of corn, a little bit, like, we can take corn and make fuel out of it, and I'm not even an ethanol fan, but that's another story. Like, so we get fuel, and then we can also get, like, feed for our animals out of it. Yep. So it's kind of a pretty useful product, and then we can. So I use a corn-based insulation for shipping it, and because it's biodegradable.
I saw that. The shipping.
Did you dissolve it or anything? It's
no.
Cool.
I need to do that because I looked at. I'm like, corn insulation. Because you were telling me about. Yeah, we switched to this green insulation. I'm looking at it.
You can put a link to it. It's Green Cell Foam is what it's called. It's a company out of Michigan. So
I was
like
talk about that.
A lot of the other shipping, and it's something I'm kind of proud of this. So not kind of proud. I am proud of it.
Proud of it. Fuck yeah, man.
I don't consider myself like.
I didn't realize they're out of Michigan.
Yeah, yep.
Whole Michigan.
So they're like, I don't consider myself like a diehard environmentalist by any means, like, but I like certainly believe that it's our responsibility to.
You've got
like,
some land ethic in you.
Yeah, we have a responsibility
modest.
to like do what we can that is better for the environment, right? So one of my concerns with shipping beef is, of course, you have more packaging product, and
Yep.
I have ordered for research purposes. I've ordered from like Kansas City Steaks, Butcher Box, Omaha Steaks, because I want to see what they're doing so that we can
Yep.
those guys have a lot of money, and like I'm trying to figure this out on my kitchen table, right?
Yep.
So like, what can I got to learn from everyone I can. That's kind of one of my beliefs. You learn from everyone,
I
but
love
they're
you.
shipping it
You're amazing.
in a styrofoam box, you
Yeah.
know, and styrofoam is a petroleum-based product. That
It's
is
not breaking down anytime
no,
soon.
it's not breaking
You're
down.
not dissolving it.
It's the like production of it is problematic and all sorts of things, and we supposed to have been running out of oil for as long as I could remember. I don't know if that's still going to happen. I don't know. I don't even know what they say that. But anyway, like it's not going to break down. So like, if we're going to ship beef, like. So I looked around and found this green cell foam. Yeah, this little company out of Michigan that makes it, and it's made out of corn. I'm assuming it's a byproduct after something else has been made out of the corn, I would guess. I don't know. I should call them up and ask them. But anyway, because it's curious to me. So, yeah, it's made out of corn that's growing right here in the U.S. And like I said, some people don't like corn, but I kind of like corn. I like growing corn. And it's completely biodegradable. You can actually so it's wrapped in plastic, so it is still some plastic. I'll admit I can't eliminate that plastic completely, but is what it is, I guess. So you can take our box and recycle our box, and then you can take the foam that is insulating it, and you can actually just compost it. And if you have a compost pile, you can compost it in your yard. It's it's literally just corn that's going back to compost. Or you can, it actually dissolves in water. Like it's kind of crazy. It'll like dissolve into this like kind of slimy water. It's kind of got a weird texture to it, and it's supposedly safe for any septic system if you have your own septic system or the sewer or anything. I mean, that's what they advertise. So like, it's not another product going into our landfills. It's just gonna stay there forever. So
That's badass,
that's
man.
something that I'm a little bit proud of on that. So,
Hell yeah, that's awesome. I was gonna ask you about that.
yeah.
I should have brought my notes.
So that's how our product comes. Like, it comes in a box. Right now, because we're just such a small company, I only have one size shipping box, which is why I had to bring you a brisket, because they don't fit in our shipping boxes very good. I'm kind of working on that, and but anyway, so it comes in a 12 by 12 box with insulation. We pack your meat in it, and then we put dry ice with it so that it stays cold and it's overnighted. We use Speedy Delivery, which is a Midwest-based company to deliver, and everything we've ever shipped through them, it leaves our farm. It's usually right around noon. And what time did it get to your house? There was about
It had
11?
to have been between 11 and noon.
Most people I talk to, it's been at their door by 11 or noon the next day.
Yeah.
So,
and then I played with the dry ice the rest of the day because I love playing with
cool,
dry ice.
You can do cool experiments with it. Yeah. I mean,
Kept freezing random shit.
Yeah, and freezing your fingers.
Because it's crazy. So like you put it on top of something, everything under it freezes.
Yeah.
And then when you put it below something, it just keeps it like normal ice.
Yeah.
I love dry ice. It's so much fun.
It is kind of some fascinating stuff. Like, and it's
so I'll be doing little science experiments
there
every
you
time
go.
I get a box.
You can make Halloween parties with it and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's
Yep.
but don't like for safety's sake, don't give it to your kid. You can like seriously free. It's like what is it like? It's like 80 below Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. It's like negative 80 Celsius. So like you can like grab it really quickly.
Yep.
But you certainly don't want to give it to like your kid to play with, because like you could seriously like frostbite your skin in like
instantly.
Yeah, in a pretty short order.
Nice.
But,
cool, man. Well, anything else?
we covered a lot of stuff here.
I'm excited. We're gonna record a commercial together.
Yeah,
You're gonna be my first commercial guest. I'm excited.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna do some badass commercials. But other than that, where can people find you?
On it's ScholzeFamilyBeef.com, which is SCHOLZE beef.com. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook is where we're most active on, which I believe it is Scholze Fam Farms, I believe.
Sounds right.
Otherwise, if you Google us, we do or Facebook search us, we do, because I never I had originally started just a Scholze Family Farms Facebook page, and you're more than welcome to follow that. I see you just followed it, Bill. I actually get those notifications, which is a little bit more about if you're more interested in the cropping, dairy side of things, feel free to follow that. There's nothing, I'm not hiding anything that we're doing. In fact, the more people that see it, the better. So, yeah, there's a Scholze Family Farms, which is, I do repost, cross-post a lot of stuff between them, but that's why there's 2 Facebook pages. One was just originally started to share with friends and neighbors about what we were doing. Then we started this beef and kind of decided to do a second one. And the beef one's a little more focused on beef. We have recipes, different cuts, a little bit more explanation of what we're trying to do on the beef. So if you Facebook search us, I believe it's Scholze Fam Farms, I believe is what, but I don't quote me on that.
I'll
Maybe
have
we
links
can
too.
link it up there. Yeah,
Yep.
We are on Twitter, not super active on Twitter, and once again, I think it's Scholze Fam Farms. Facebook is Scholze Family Beef. Facebook is Scholze Family Beef. Twitter is Scholze Fam Farms, and then we are also on Instagram. I couldn't tell you. I'm not active on Instagram. My brother does that. And then we also are getting into Pinterest. So,
recipes coming in hot.
Yeah. So we're going to try to post recipes on our new website when it's designed. Link them to Pinterest, and that's a whole learning curve, like linking social media to your page and drawing traffic that way.
Yes, sir. It's strategy.
There's a lot of strategy in that we're slowly learning, and I kind of have a love-hate relationship with social media. It's awesome. I also have tried to back off some use, and then now we're doing this, which requires me to use more social media. And
come here.
Yeah. So anyway,
Oh yeah, it's the battle,
social media.
man.
It's
the battle.
awesome, but it's
technology.
also it's awesome, but it also has some real.
It's got some evil.
It's
evil
real
corners.
society downsides to it, and
Exactly.
I think that's a lost art of actually having conversation with people, and
we crushed it today. I feel.
I feel we did too. Yeah. Pat ourselves on the back.
Hell yeah. Cool. Well,
I didn't know how long I was going to be able to talk, but I actually feel like we could keep talking. But I guess we got to. At some point.
We are gonna keep talking. We're gonna make some commercials.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we hour and a half, man. You were all worried. You were like, Bill.
Well, I don't.
Bill, I can't do an hour. I can't do it. I'm like, well, we got this. Not a problem. Not a problem.
I've laid awake the last couple nights. What am I going to talk about? But I should have known I have a kind of a gift of being able to talk about. Lots
You're
of
an
things.
interesting dude, man. You got a lot of cool shit going on. So I'm excited to share this with people. But all right, everybody listening, peace out.
All right.
We're out of here.